Okay, let's continue our Western progression of international organizations based on trade, continuing on into Asia with one that's called, surprise, surprise, ASEAN. It's not hard to figure out where ASEAN is at. It's in Asia, Southeast Asia in particular. Now, finally, we're actually getting to an old one. All the other blocks we've talked about are fairly new. This one's ancient by world standards of international organizations, and most of you have never even heard of it. And most pundits in the world don't think it's of much consequence and don't care about it that much. But watch out, my friends. ASEAN is an Asian tiger that can hunt, and it's in the game for the long term. I gotta admit to you right up front, I really like ASEAN. I think it's really important to understanding the evolution of Asia as a continent over the course of the next 100 years. So let's do it. ASEAN is a geopolitical and economic organization of 10 countries, 2 handfuls, which really comprises all the countries in the region that we call Southeast Asia for this course. It was started in 1967. I wasn't even alive in 1967. And it was started by Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. Now, were these countries back in 1967 sitting around saying, wow, we'd really like to increase our trade between each other because we're such great economic powers? No. That was the basis, all right? The basis certainly was some sort of economic activity between them. But in 67, it was much more focused on working together to actually help each other build their nation states. I mean, these were new countries back in the 60s. In fact, some of them were still controlled outright by Western European powers. Many of them were in civil wars with each other, or independence wars against outside invaders. And of course, you got the Vietnam War, which is going to kick up in this region just a little bit after this era. So that was the actual focus. Let's work together to help each other form real countries based on something, our culture, and help each other push out foreign domination, push out foreign influence, push out the foreign colonizers, and work together to economically grow in a diversified, intelligent way. I mean, these guys are really forward thinking. This is a long time ago, and these were weak countries that got together to form up this union. I just got to give kudos to them. I think that these guys were geniuses for thinking of this so early on. They wanted to economically grow and help each other grow in such a way that they just weren't going to be used by exterior powers. Just have the big economies of the world come in and use them for their cheap labor, or come use them and extract all their cheap natural resources. These guys said, hey, we want to work together to make sure that doesn't happen. And it really wasn't that they were just anti-Western, that they're, the U.S. is the big power, the Europeans are the big powers, which they were. They were leery of them for obvious reasons, but actually they had a real leery eye on China as well, because in the late 60s, China was just starting to get back up on its feet and starting to become a world power again. So these Southeast Asian nations were saying, hey, we should bind ourselves together to effectively counter all of these major world powers from our direct north, but also from across the oceans. So very forward-thinking grouping at such an early time in the 20th century. Since then, since the original 5, the membership has expanded to include Brunei, Burma, aka Myanmar, I still call it Burma, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. Much like Brazil is to Mercosur, or the U.S. is to NAFTA, kind of jot this down that Indonesia is the biggest economy in this ASEAN grouping, by twice as much. And it does kind of see itself as a natural leader of the region / the ASEAN bloc. Now, other ASEAN members may disagree with that, and that's okay, but Indonesia is kind of the biggest. It is what I consider one of the rising regional powers, and ASEAN really has got its back on that. That's one of the reasons that it's getting big, and ASEAN is getting big at the same time. So what does ASEAN do? Well, of course, they want to accelerate economic growth. Surprise, surprise, as I've already told you, this is, in essence, a trade bloc. It's the basis for it. But they also do some other features which make it unique, including social progress they like to focus on. They say, hey, like Mercosur, we'd like to maybe think about providing more benefits for our folks and making this whole area a better place, and culturally develop ourselves to become real serious world countries and world powers. And also, we want to work towards the protection of peace and stability within our bloc. Woo! This is the first one we've gotten to where that was a stated goal from the get-go of yes, we're forming up ASEAN as an economic bloc, but we also want to work on peace and stability, because you can't have economic growth if you don't got peace and stability. And as I've already mentioned, many of these countries were involved in civil wars or had been led by brutal dictators or had foreign intervention at the time that they decided to start the bloc up. So they have actually done a lot. The ASEAN organization has done a lot, really, to help stabilize and have peace in this region so that they can have economic growth. Again, they're not the richest entity in the world, but they're getting there, and this organization has really helped. Now, do they do trade? Sure they do. But they really are so much more. The ASEAN bloc is really, I believe, my assessment, is striving to be much like the European Union. They're going past simple economic growth and economic collaboration, and in very concrete ways that you should probably think about and jot down. The ASEAN group is expanding for regional political integration. Now, that hasn't happened a lot yet, but it's something they have been openly talking about and thinking about. How can we politically tie ourselves together and make decisions together as a group as opposed to 10 individual countries? They already have now worked out a regional shared airspace. Yeah, I know. So to the airline industry, internationally, once you're in the ASEAN bloc, you're just in. It's being the same. You don't have to ask permission to cross international airspace. They have already worked it out. And that's really conducive and helpful for economics and tourism and lots of other things. They also have a common environmental policy. That's pretty forward thinking too, especially because they haven't actually polluted the hell out of that region like other industrialized developed countries have. They have a common energy security policy. Wow, that's impressive. And as part of that common energy security policy, they have built-in energy alternatives that they are promoting. Dude, why isn't the U.S. doing that? They already have in the workings a regional electric grid, a singular electric grid for the entire 10-country bloc. Wow, I mean, that's serious integration. I mean, it's still in the works. It's not there yet, but that is a different kind of thinking that's well and beyond both the sovereign state thing, but it's also beyond just a simple economic trade bloc. And in a most bizarre move, the ASEAN group has a regional human rights standards that's been codified into their constitution. What? Why would I suggest that's so bizarre? Well, because you have Burma in there. You have Burma, aka Myanmar, this country that's been led by a brutal military dictatorship that's destroyed its own citizens and had every other country in the world make fun of it for human rights abuses. And they signed up for this as well. It's crazy. And for the ASEAN group to even propose that to their own member states, knowing that Burma is already breaking the rules, it's a very interesting phenomenon. It really does speak to the idea that they are taking seriously the preservation of peace and stability, because you got to have that if you're going to have any economic growth. But let's be honest here. They're doing or trying all that stuff I've just mentioned. But they are not a single entity yet. And they may never incorporate politically to the level that the EU has achieved. They may never do it. I mean, they might, but they may not ever get to that point. However, their attempt certainly has been a factor in the peace and stability of this area, which has been racked by war for decades. And again, there's the Vietnam War and there's dictatorships in Cambodia and Burma. So ASEAN has done a lot to help chill this place out significantly. And that's not to be understated. Now back to the economics though, since it is a trade bloc. It does have about 10% of the world population is in the ASEAN bloc. A couple years ago, they had their GDP was about 1.5 trillion, which pales in comparison to the U.S., of course. But if it was a single economic country, that would be the 8th or 9th largest economy in the world. So it's nothing to sneeze at, okay? And it's getting bigger. And here's where I want to end on, why I get so excited about ASEAN, why I tell you I personally like it. Check your chopsticks, baby. This entity is in a great, great, great position. Next door neighbor to China. The biggest, soon to be, biggest economy on planet Earth, which is going to supersede America. Let me ask you something. If you were in business and wanted to increase your economic activity, Would you like to be next door to the biggest consumers and the biggest producing nation on planet Earth? I mean, that's where I'd put my Walmart or my business or put my country if I could pick it up and set it down somewhere. And right around the corner from China is Japan. So you're looking at the numbers 2 and 3 economy on planet Earth right here, next door neighbors with ASEAN, a place that is known for natural resource extraction, for cheaper labor, as a manufacturing hub. And Southeast Asia is actually really becoming a workshop for Asia. They're becoming a workshop for China. A lot of Chinese jobs are now moving to Southeast Asia. So ASEAN is in a awesome position. I mean, just awesome position economically and geopolitically and everything else. Their prospects are stellar. And if that wasn't enough, I really want you to know this stuff. That's ASEAN, the ASEAN 10 you got now. There's also other associate members of this trade bloc. Associate members which would like to do a lot more with this trade bloc. I'm going to kind of pick them off one at a time. Associate members now that come to meetings with the ASEAN group include China, Japan, and South Korea. Whoa, stop right there. When you hear that, when you hear this little acronym, ASEAN plus 3, that's what it's referring to. The ASEAN plus China, Japan, South Korea. Holy cow! That is some economic firepower. The number 2, the number 3, and the number, I think, 12 economy that want to sit in on the meetings of ASEAN. This place is happening, and it doesn't end there. Other associate members now include India, Australia, and New Zealand. Woo! This block is happening, man. My blood pressure's just getting all up in the hizzle because this thing is the future of Asia. I mean, holy freaking fortune cookies, man. This block looks to be the foundation of a future continent-wide trade bloc of epic proportions. Take a deep breath and consider. There's ASEAN, and as associate members, it has China and India. You're looking at a single trade bloc which could very well soon have 60 or 70% of the humans alive on planet Earth in a single trade bloc. That is outrageous. And then you add in all these other Asian entities which are all growing like wildfire right now. You remember that from the economics lecture. And this is an international organization which promises to be a major incentive for stability Asia-wide, while also encouraging increasing trade and economics Asia-wide, much like the EU. And again, I'm going to stress this one more time so you understand. It's not simply that they're a trade bloc that increases trade with each other. They are becoming a foundation of which could be helping promote stability, people not getting into wars with each other, no border disputes, no open animosity, and encouraging trade between all their entities, much like the European Union. There's a reason why Europe hasn't gone to war with itself for so long, because they formed up this trade bloc which tied them together and made Europe very stable. I'm suggesting ASEAN may be the same deal for a much bigger continent with way many more people. Whew! That's why you got to know your ASEAN.